So we repeat, Farid used to eat meat in Germany. Farid didn't used to eat meat in Germany. That is not actually a contradiction. Why? Because you could say in certain times, in certain places, in certain with certain people, he used to eat meat, and in certain times, in certain places, he didn't. That's fine. It is not linguistically contradictory, right? As opposed to meat in Germany is halal. Meat in Germany is not halal. That's linguistically contradictory. Okay? So when you say, I have 5 Sahih hadiths that the Prophet ﷺ used to raise his hands before he came out of before when he went into ruku' or came out of ruku' or came out of the second, that doesn't mean he did it all the time, did it? Does it? So I have he did it or he used to do it, therefore it is sunnah. That's not necessarily the case. Does that make sense? So this is why usul fiqh is so important. Because there's certain things that are like, oh, that's obvious. It's like that's not obvious, right? That's not actually obvious. You've made an assumption there, right? So inshallah, those of you who look into it will see what Ibrahim Nakhai says about it. It's like, oh, it's interesting. Ibrahim Nakhai says it's not sunnah. Sufyan, right? Sufyan Thawri says it's not sunnah, right? And he was asked, I think somebody asked Sufyan Thawri, he said, swear by Allah, the Prophet didn't do it. He says, he can't do that. So then why isn't it sunnah then? It's not as simple as he did it, making it sunnah. It's not that simple. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we spoke about the actions. What is the in itself, right? The dalala of al-fi'l doesn't say something in itself. The dalala of al-tark, Rasulullah didn't do it. It's even less, right? The problem with the difference in something being am and something being mujmal, and the actions are mujmal or always mujmal min nahiyatin ma. They're always right. Often that's not a problem, right? I say, yesterday I got up at this time and I did this and I did this and I explain in detail. Yeah, it's obviously vague from some other details that aren't relevant. So I'm not going to be pedantic. But there are certain times, certain places when you say, for example, the Prophet ﷺ istasqa, the Prophet ﷺ sought rain. How exactly did he do that? He made dua, or did he pray a ritual prayer that was different, right? The Prophet ﷺ, I don't know what it was, tawadda'a, he washed. What do you mean by washed? He washed as you do wudu as a ritual, or he washed as in you normally wash, right? It's not so clear. Um, right? The Prophet ﷺ saw some kind of harm on his shoe. Does it mean something disgusting like phlegm? Or does it mean something like najas, right? Other, something not nice, like it's not very clear. So there's a lot of things when you talk about when we deal with actions, they by their nature, they're not very clear. Okay, makes sense, inshallah?
Yes,
So
yeah.
with that addenda, well, with that intro, do you want to read here from um, um, here from Al-Qadi Abu Bakr ibn Arabi, he said, لا خلاف بين الأمة أن أفعال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ملجأ في المسألة مفزع في الشريعة بيان للمشكلة فقد كانت الصحابة رضي الله عنهم تبحث عن أفعاله كما تبحث عن أقواله وتستقرئ جميع حركاته وسكناته وأكله وشربه وقيامه وجلوسه ونظره ولبسته right ونومه ويقظته حتى ما كان يشذ عنهم شيء من سكون ولا حركاته ولو لم يكن ملاذا لو وجد فيه المستعيذ معاذا ولو لم يكن ملاذا ولا وجد فيه المستعيذ ولا وجد not وجد ولا وجد فيه المستعيذ معاذا لما كان لتتبعه معنى right so it says we all agree that it's super important yes but dealing with the technicalities is a little bit hard that's all so by no means we're saying oh it doesn't matter what the Prophet did because it doesn't mean anything astaghfirullah that's kufr right? That's kufr to say that. Nobody's saying that. What we're saying is you have to be careful because there's a number of things you have to do. Actions, it's much easier to, words much easier to deal with than actions. So this is why we will be somewhat surprised sometimes when somebody will quote a hadith and kind of act in the hadith in kind of one way and be like, how is that? It's kind of odd, isn't it? So I mean, doesn't hadith like couldn't you assume the Prophet did this or that wouldn't that be reasonable, right? And in reality, that process of filling in the gaps is quite difficult. So that's why they're very careful about it. Okay. Um, okay, wallahu a'lam. Okay, so we'll stop here. And we'll read the text inshallah next week. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.